Welcome to the Terrible Podcast with your hosts from SteelersDepot.com, where you can find all your latest and greatest Steelers news. It's Dave Bryan and Alex Kozora, always lit, talking Steelers. And now, here's Dave and Alex.
Welcome to the Terrible Podcast, Season 14, Episode 13. He's Dave Bryan. I'm Alex Kozora, SteelersDepot.com. Thanks for being back with us here this Wednesday, Steelers Nation. Dave, just about 24 hours away from the Pittsburgh Steelers preseason finale against the Atlanta Falcons, and cutdown date just around the corner after that on August 29th by 4 p.m. Eastern Time. So, for this Steelers roster, Dave, it is speak now or forever hold your peace. These guys trying to make a spot, win a position battle, still a lot to look towards heading into this finale.
Yes, there is. It's a big week for several of these guys to make one final push. And I think Mike Tomlin once again made that pretty clear during his press conference on, Wednesday there. Going to be interesting to see how he handles certain. I feel like I have a pretty good feel on what he's going to do here, but I've thought that before, and it's end up going different directions. But obviously, we'll break down a little bit about what Mike Tomlin had to say. But it should be a fun game to watch. I would imagine all healthy rookies should get some pretty good burn in this game, and that means guys like Joey Porter Jr. and Nick Herbig and Spencer Anderson, and just go Darnell Washington. It ought to be a fun game at the very least of watching a lot of these young draft picks, and then obviously we've mentioned several position groups that seems like there's some tough decisions that'll be interesting to watch play out. And more specifically, this team needs to continue to stay healthy through this final preseason game, because knock on wood. Obviously they've had some injuries, and obviously the Corey Trice thing in camp and all. They've done fairly well in that department so far.
Yeah, I think, as you said, knock on wood, but the health of the team, especially to the starters, the core group, has been really good overall. Dave, before we get into what Mike Tomlin had to say and preview this game and some other things, let's do some quick housekeeping, some injury-related news here. Duke Dawson has been released off of injured reserve, and wide receivers Hakeem Butler and Cody White have passed through waivers as expected and reverted to IR. And actually, I don't know if did we talk about that on the Monday show, or did that come after with Cody White and Hakeem Butler being waived injured?
I think we had the front end of those two. We only had the one transaction, and then I think and then the linebacker was signed, and I think that came after we finished the show, and then we didn't have the back end of that transaction with the two wide receivers being waived injured there in Cody White and the Butler thing, right? We went into you got to game day there, and all of a sudden he was a scratch there and didn't play at all. And then Cody White, it going back through the game, it seemed, I think he took a pretty good pop maybe at one point during that game, but he obviously must have injured something during that game. He played a lot of snaps and played on special teams and all like that, but both those guys being waived injured, that obviously brings an end to the Hakeem Butler, but that was trending not in a so great direction anyway, right? From basically based on what you were reporting throughout training camp, and it didn't look like he was going to have a good shot at making the roster anyway. And then Cody White, was a guy that you kind of thought, hey, this guy could once again he's like a professional practice squad player for Pittsburgh at this point, and even that now isn't going to happen, at least not at the start of the season. Now we'll find out here in a couple of days what the length of those. Well, they're both on IR. I barring those injuries being super serious, you'd probably expect both those guys to receive an injury settlement within this next week here, and then neither one of them would be allowed to re-sign back with the Steelers until 3 weeks on top of whatever the injury settlement length is there. So could a guy like Cody White, barring his injury not being serious, be back on, let's say, the practice squad by week 7, week 8? Yeah, I think it's possible. But in the short term, neither of those guys are going to be with the Steelers, I don't think, at the start of the 2023 season. So next phase is just watching to see if there's an injury settlement with those two. And then, as you mentioned, Duke Dawson, I think we'd already talked that he was going to have an injury settlement there, and that ended up being for 3 weeks with him, I think.
Yeah,
but
so
I'll find out for sure here what his number is here very soon, probably by tomorrow.
I mean, I assume that speaks to the injury that he had, well enough to obviously cause him to run out of time and be placed on IR initially. Wasn't as serious as what probably Corey Trice is dealing with. Maybe that's just good news for Dawson personally. Yeah, Butler had a really disappointing camp, just never stood out. Drops were an issue, couldn't separate, and unfortunate for him about the injury. Not that you're ever going to be happy about that, but not really going to materially change his chances too much because he was not going to make this 53 and probably not make the practice squad. Cody White, though, big bummer on that because you're right. He felt like the practice squad lock, versatile, special teams kind of guy. I know that so many people on the internet will say, oh, well, he only makes it because his dad is in the front office, Sheldon White. Sheldon White got hired last year. Cody White's been on this team for a couple of years, so it's nothing to do with that. But unfortunate for him because I felt like White was a guy you could write in pen to make the practice squad.
Yeah, and once again, he's been on there for quite a while, got elevated a couple of times, and a pretty good special teams player. So we'll have to see. Maybe we'll be talking about him in the middle of this season or something like that.
And then in terms of the players who have been signed to replace those spots, it is Aaron Cruikshank, who was going to be a return guy. We did talk about him Monday briefly. Small returner. Went to Wisconsin initially, transferred to Rutgers, was a really good returner in college, 5 career runbacks. And then the linebacker, might butcher the pronunciation here, but I think Coney Dang, a linebacker from Cal. He's big, he's long, got hurt his last year in college, was with Chicago and I believe Atlanta this summer. And so he's going to be signed here to finish out the preseason.
All right.
One other piece of news here, and it made my heart happy for a moment, just to work out, but the Steelers worked out tight end Noah Gindorf yesterday, rookie undrafted free agent out of North Dakota State. I believe he was undrafted free agent. I'm pretty sure on that. Yeah. He got waived by, I think it was Seattle a short time ago, but big body blocker, one of my kind of guys coming out of this 2023 class, had some injury concerns. That was the biggest knock on him. Obviously, they have not signed him. They may be a speed dial type of thing, but the type of tight end that probably Pittsburgh likes.
Yeah, he was my 7th round pick in my final mock draft.
Yeah, and I assume you did that because he's got the look of a big body blocking tight end in Pittsburgh.
It just those kind of that I'm fascinated by. The big body can block. You don't find too many of those kind of big body guys that can actually get it done like that. And I thought he could, but I mean, I think I even stated in that post that he'd probably go undrafted, but which he did. But he didn't stick, I guess, with the Seahawks there. So maybe that's a guy we'll be talking about in a couple more weeks as a practice squad guy.
True. That's a good point. So don't want to spend too much time on that, but I did like Gindorf coming out, and you had him in the mock, so it's worth mentioning that. All right, let's move on now to Mike Tomlin having his press conference yesterday. And as you mentioned at the top, Tomlin, with the same phrasing as he's had throughout the entire preseason, saying that all healthy players will play, did seem to hint pretty strongly the starters will play in some capacity. He didn't put a snap count to how many series and what exactly he's looking for, basically saying the starters will play until they've shown what they needed to show, and then they'll be bumped out for the second string, and they'll do the same, and the third string will finish things out. So, does that mean a Cam Hayward's going to play? Does that mean a Patrick Peterson's going to play? Tomlin said all healthy will play in week 1, and then some of those old heads did not play, so we'll see. But I would expect to see Kenny Pickett, most of the starting offense, if not the entire starting offense out there, and at least half the starters defensively.
As you parse through what he said, or at least this is my take on it, because he phrased it kind of weird. All healthy players will play, and I'm not going to guarantee everybody's going to play like that. And then he obviously said leave the light on for Larry Ogunjobi, Trey Norwood, and Nate Herbig. Obviously, if Norwood and Nate Herbig are healthy enough to play, you want to get those guys some snaps in this game. Specifically, Herbig, potentially at center there. Larry Ogunjobi, I mean, I don't know what you do there. I would err on the side of caution with him, unless he's just scrapping to tell me to fight, that he needs some snaps and all like that. I think I'd take it easy on him. And then if you go a little bit further into what Tomlin had to say, he says, first team all pros and 30-year-old corners I know more about. So it's not about the guys oftentimes that I choose not to play. It's about the opportunity for others. He says, every rep that TJ Watt doesn't take, I know he's first team all pro caliber, and it's an opportunity for Nick Herbig to show his skills and get better. For example, every time I don't play Cam Hayward, it's an opportunity for DeMarvin Leal and Keanu Benton and others. And so that's the mentality. My job is to provide these guys individually and collectively what it is that they need. And sometimes, less physical reps in an effort to get game, blah, blah, blah. Just kind of my guess. And that's all it is, because I try to parse through some of these things, that he's such a wordsmith and doesn't paint himself into the corner. He only paints the barn red. He used that yesterday again.
Oh, yeah.
As well. If I had to bet, Alex, I'd say Watt, Cam Hayward, Minka, Patrick Peterson don't play in this game.
I'm with you. I think that's probably the right approach in this one. You wouldn't be shocked, though, to see those guys get a series or two, would you?
I mean, right. If they did play it, you better not go get popcorn or a cold drink or anything like that, because you might miss them there. But is 3 more snaps or 5 more snaps?
Right. Like, what are you looking for? What are you trying to accomplish by giving Cam Hayward 5 snaps?
They got out there this past week. They got lathered up and all like that. I think that's kind of what Mike Tomlin was trying to tell us. And look, why would, and you obviously you hope to get Keanu Benton back on the field this week. And Mike Tomlin talked about Joey Porter Jr. At the end of that last game, and saying how they kind of held him back a little bit because they want to get a good look at him in stadium against the Falcons. To me, this is a prime opportunity to. Heck, I'd roll Nick Herbig out there as a starter, and I'd hope that Atlanta rolls out Jake Matt. And it comes to find out, I guess they're playing Bergeron at guard, comes to find out. So I don't even think they're playing Bergeron at tackle. Remember, he's a Syracuse kid. That is he a guard? Is he a tackle? That kind of thing. So, but if, and I, obviously I haven't went over to look and see what the Falcons' plan is for this game here. But I'd be interested to see Jake Matthews versus Nick Herbig for a handful snaps in this contest. I guess what I'm getting at is this is a great opportunity to get, once again, these younger draft picks specifically, especially on the defensive side of football, as many reps as possible. So I would expect Tomlin to throw Joey Porter Jr. out there as a starter, Nick Herbig out there as a starter. Benton, if he's healthy, I mean, I don't know if he starts, but he could, and it wouldn't shock me. But just parsing through this, I kind of expect those 4 on defense not to play at this point. And then on offense, man, it sounds like the starting offense will play, but this could be another 6 or 7 play series and take it to the house,
I know I'm going to throw a bunch of hypotheticals at you, but I'm with you. The starting offense will play, and I'm okay with that much more so than, if TJ Watt were to play. I don't think there's much of a need to do those kinds of things defensively. But let's say the starting offense goes out there, 3-and-out punt. I know would be uncommon to see this preseason. Let's assume that it happens. Do you put him out there a second time for a second series?
Who's that?
The starting offense. They go 3 and out on their first possession.
No. Well, now I'm making that what's that kabuchi meme?
Kombucha. Yeah. Oh yeah. You're doing the whole like.
Maybe not. Yeah. And they, what would you see in another series? I guess just other than just opportunity to. No,
maybe work something in that first series that you didn't get a chance. Second and short. I don't know.
I tell you what. If maybe you got the defense provided a turnover or something like that, and you got down in the red zone and you weren't able to work on any red zone in that first series or something like that, maybe I would be inclined to do that. I think best case scenario here is a 10-play drive. Get down into the low red zone and then have to try to punch it in from there. Because Alex, if I would have told you at the start of the preseason, going into preseason game, here's what's going to happen, Alex. Through the first 2 preseason games, the Steelers starting offense is going to play 17 offensive total snaps. They're going to have 3 explosive play touchdowns within those 17 snaps, and they're not going to take a single snap inside the red zone. I mean, not that you wouldn't have already have had me committed by that point, but you would have thought I was crazy, right? So,
sure.
They've checked as we've stated, and Mike Tomlin and I think even Matt Canada, they've checked a lot of boxes in those 17 plays. The only box they haven't checked is red zone,
right?
And low red zone. So, I guess to go back to answer your question there, if they went 3 and out in the first series, and if something happened where maybe if you got the ball even on a nice punt return deeper into the Falcons' end of the field, maybe you send it back out there, but. If that's the worst thing I have to deal with, this team does 7 shots all the time, so it's not like they get that work. But I guess that would be the only thing to entice me is to get some low red zone work.
I think it's a good point. You're right. It's the one thing we've yet to see from the starting offense is some of that red zone play. And we know how crucial that is, just generally speaking, in the NFL to finish drives, get 7, not 3. This has been the 23rd ranked red zone offense each of the last 2 years. And so it's a huge point of emphasis. You'd like to see it, especially in terms of the ground game. But, what are the odds that you're going to get that? It's really hard to say. So my thought is, Dave, either if you get a first down on the first drive, regardless of outcome, then you pull the starters. If you don't get a first down, then okay, play them for a second drive, and regardless of outcome, then pull the starters after that. So 2 drives max, 1 first down on the opening possession is enough for me to yank those guys.
Is this the most snaps that Kenny Pickett will play in the preseason for his entire NFL career?
Oh, man. This, like the totality of this preseason and the most number of snaps?
Yeah, look, he's already played 17. Let's say he plays 7. That's 20.
Yeah. Well, he had more last year, right? But I say you're saying going forward,
right? Going forward, and look, I kind of thought that he might get more than 24 or 25 snaps in this preseason.
Right. I think the plan was to do that, but they were scoring so quickly. It just kind of said, well, they scored, so I guess we got to take them out now. So to answer that question, I don't know. It's hard to say for sure. Who knows? We could have a million scenarios where Matt Canada's no longer here next year. So there's a new OC. You want to get Pickett more reps in the new guy's offense and stuff like that. So, I'd be just making something up there. But it's a fun question to think about. Here's
the thing: of the AFC North quarterbacks, Kenny Pickett leads all of them in preseason snaps this year with 17, and really only 2 quarterbacks have played in the AFC North in the preseason. That's Kenny Pickett and Deshaun Watson, because obviously Burrow's been hurt. And I guess, are you surprised Lamar Jackson hasn't taken any snaps?
I hadn't thought about it much, but with the new OC and Todd Monken hasn't played in a long time. I guess a little bit surprised. I thought Watson would have had more snaps than Pickett, though, just because they want to get Watson as much time as possible and kind of what's supposed to be his year for him in this offense.
Well, I would guess then this preseason finale would be more. You would think you'd see Watson and Lamar Jackson in these final 2, right?
You'd think, but I hadn't listened. All I know is that John Harbaugh has been kind of whiny about the preseason streak, and that's all I focused on over there in Baltimore. So I really don't know what their plans are, but that certainly makes sense.
All right. But yeah, I mean that's kind of my thoughts about playing time. So we'll obviously see how it transpires. If the offense plays, they won't play much, and then once again, I expect like four or five of those. I would be interested to see Keanu Neal. I hope they roll if they don't play Minka. Obviously, and they play Neal, Keanu Neal, and Casey. I'd like to see those two paired up for good 8 or 9, 10 snaps.
Yeah, they should be the starting safeties, I would expect. If Minka does not play, I would expect Casey and Neal to be the guys. So transitioning into that, focusing on the guys we expect to play and play more significantly, what are some of the things, and let's start defensively, what are some of the things you're looking for in this game, be it individual players trying to prove something, make this team position battles, wherever you want to take it, feel free. But defensively, what's on your mind for this game?
I want to see a lot of Joey Porter Jr. because I think it goes without saying at this point is that their plan is to get him on the field early and often as part of this defense. A sub package guy that could see a nice snap count right out of the chute there. So you're talking about, I don't know what's this game going to be, 63. 57 to 63 defensive snaps probably in this game. I'd like to see him play at least half of them if they can. Maybe play the entire first half or something with Joey Porter Jr. I'd like to see as much of Keanu Benton and Nick Herbig, I think, as possible on the defensive side of the football. I feel like we've seen enough of those top 3 linebackers at this point, although I think they're going to play. I'm interested to see, because didn't they have one snap with just Alexander on the field?
The dime snap, yeah, that
right.
was the lone dime snap, was just Quan Alexander.
But how much do you actually have to show that now at this point?
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously game dependent. Buffalo got themselves in a 3rd and 29, and that kind of led themselves to Pittsburgh being able to play dime. But, unless Atlanta's in a similar situation, you probably won't see it.
As far as up front guys go, assuming, Hayward doesn't play and all like that, I feel like enough about Montravius Adams at this point that I would put Benton and some of those other guys out there, Fehoko and Watts, and who else? Loudermilk. I would burn those guys pretty hard at the beginning because in so many words, didn't even. I mean, Mike Tomlin says it every year, but Terrell Austin said during his press conference the other day that they're going to probably end up cutting, a couple of, at least one player on that defensive line that, should probably be on a roster, So, and I've gone back through the tape on the defensive side. Some of those back end guys didn't really seem to do all that much separating. So I would like to give them one more opportunity to separate there.
I'm with you. I think D-line is the number one thing to watch in terms of position battles and guys jockeying for positions and spots on the team and just everything that you can think about, whether that's Adams and Benton and Fehoko, the nose tackles. Obviously, Benton's making the team, but who's going to start? Who's going to have sub-package roles? All that you're looking for. I think Loudermilk versus Watts could potentially be a 2 dogs, 1 bone situation. I would play Adams, though, because I think he's a guy that's still fighting for a spot. And if he's fighting for a spot, I think he deserves the opportunity to play in this game.
Is Adams tradable? Does he have trade value?
You gotta, I shouldn't say you gotta think, but I do have the question, can you trade one of these defensive linemen? And I don't know who, and I don't know where, and obviously the value is going to be pretty minimal.
It's not Leal. Not Leal. Loudermilk, right? Loudermilk's not tradable, right?
He's a little bit more scheme specific. So if there was a 3-4 team looking for kind of a rundown type of dude, I can kind of see that. Is Watts tradable? He was a free agent for a long time and signed a 1-year deal. So I think the league kind of told you what you thought about him.
Right.
So
and it's not like he's really flashed in 2 games so far, No,
there's some juice there, but yeah, it's not like his tape's been amazing. And if it was, he probably would just be kept. So Yeah, I mean, Adams, I wouldn't say no. I wouldn't say that, dude, if they traded Adams, I wouldn't. It's not a crazy suggestion. Obviously, I just don't know, what kind of market there's going to be.
Yeah, I would think of all the kind of guys, at least the guys that I'm still trying to figure out who's going to be, maybe part of that 7. I would think that Adams, he obviously, he probably would have the most callers. Now, even so, I don't think you would get anything more than like a 6 or a 7 for him, and all. But I would think he would probably be the most marketable as far as people may be calling for him.
I'll say this about the D-line trade possibilities. If you're Pittsburgh and you're keeping 7 at max and you have 8 guys that I think are worthy to keep on the 53, you got to call some teams and just test the waters. And it's tough to do this time of year because if you're calling about, hey, Carolina, you want to trade for Montravius Adams, that means, hey, Pittsburgh, you're about to cut Montravius Adams, and maybe we can just waiver wire claim you instead. So it's tough to make those deals, but they do happen. Obviously, it happened last year with Pittsburgh acquired Jesse Davis and Malik Reed. So I think if you're Omar Khan, you got to at least shop somebody around because they've admitted they're going to lose somebody who's talented, and you might as well just see if somebody will give you something.
Right. Yeah, I would agree with that.
I'm watching safety too.
Even a guy like, wait a minute now, a guy like Adams wouldn't be subject to waivers though, would he?
I forget how the process works. I mean, he's vested.
I think he
right?
would. I would think he would just be a contract termination.
Okay.
So not subject to waivers. So at that point, teams would be at the mercy of signing a guy. Then it would be a free for all when it comes to a guy like that, as opposed to a waiver wire claim.
Sure,
there.
But that's also my point. You trade for a guy so that you get the guy, and he doesn't get a suitor from somebody else and want to go sign with another team. The way that Jesse Davis was not subject to waivers last year, but Pittsburgh traded it for him, so they guaranteed they got the guy, and he didn't decide to go somewhere else. So whether it's waiver or signing, you want to just be able to get the guy.
Right.
But I'm watching safety as well. Kenny Robinson, can he make a final push? Trey Norwood, I assume he's going to play based on the comments Mike Tomlin made last week. They were going to sit him out of the Bills game to play him for the Atlanta game. He's yet to play in a preseason game. He's a guy trying to make that last second push to stick. It's going to be maybe an uphill battle, but safety, those guys trying to claw their way probably from being either right on the bubble or outside the bubble to inside the bubble.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Norwood's got to get himself on the field if he can.
Right. It was a good start to camp, but feels like an eternity ago when you have a couple preseason games and the slot corners looking good. How safe do you think Sullivan and Riley are? I think based on what Tomlin and Austin have said, they feel fairly safe.
Yeah, it feels like and obviously 12 days from now we could be saying, well, what happened? But just kind of, not only their play, but the report, your reports and things to come out of the mouths of the coaches. It feels like both Sullivan and Elijah Riley are going to be on this team. And then, obviously barring any injuries in this final preseason game and assuming James Pierre sticks as a special teams guy, then that would give them 6, right? At corner.
Yeah, that would give them 6. And so I think that's the way it's trending right now. Like you said, we can be surprised, but that's my read of things as we sit here today. Anything else here defensively you're looking for, Dave?
I'd give Mark Robinson as much possible burn in all areas of the game that I could. I'd have him out there for the entire game if you let me. With Mark Robinson, to get him ready, more ready at linebacker, get him a lot of burn on special teams. So that would be something else that I try to accomplish in this game. And obviously Tanner Muse, assuming he's going to be a 5th inside linebacker. I don't know if Danny Smith probably knows all he probably wants to know about him at special teams. So do you really have to? I mean, you probably want to put him out there with your starting special teams unit for the first couple of times, but I don't think you have to see a lot out of him because you don't, if you have to get in a position where Tanner Muse is playing snaps for you at inside linebacker, something's gone bad.
Sure, but he should play in the second half because I assume those starters will be out. Will Nick Kwiatkowski play? I mean, I think his odds in the spot is faded, but hopefully he'll be healthy enough to suit up in this game. I'm with you on Mark Robinson because this is a guy who seemingly will not get a lot of playing time defensively in the regular season based on how things are structured right now. The top three are kind of the top three. So get Robinson as much time right now. So if you had to put him in week 3, somebody gets hurt, he's part of that rotation. He's at least got some, fair amount of defensive snaps in the summer.
Right. I agree.
I want to see DeMarvin Leal. I want to see him as a pass rusher, and hopefully he gets some work against the first team Falcons offensive line. If Hayward doesn't play, if Ogunjobi doesn't play, or is very limited, then that should mean a lot of snaps for a guy like Leal. And the Falcons have a good offensive line. Fritz Lindstrom's a really good offensive guard. And so I think Leal is a pass rusher. I have just not gotten the sense he's been able to merge his athletic tools with the technique as a pass rusher in this second year. I think in the run game, like I said before, he surprised me with how good he's looked against the run. But surprisingly, as a pass rusher, I think he's given them almost nothing.
Yeah, fair point. Fair point. Once again, I think the back end of some of those fringe defensive line guys will be very interesting to watch on this. Offensive side of football, if Nate Herbig plays, I want to see him get snaps at center. I would like to see Spencer Anderson play some left tackle spots, even if it's late in this contest. Broderick Jones probably still going to get a lot of burn in this one, right? You probably want to get him another 35 to 40 snaps if you can.
Yeah, I expect, Dan Moore to be with the starters, so 1 to 2 series, play 10 snaps probably at most, and then Broderick Jones should get 30, 40 something snaps, second team left tackle.
Right. And I'm trying to think of what else needs to shake out maybe on the offensive line. I'd get Cook, Dylan Cook, some snaps at both tackle spots later in this game if I could. I think you'd agree that he's probably the best case as far as a practice squad guy goes right now.
Yeah, I think we'll talk about Cook with my updated roster prediction here, but I think Cook's a guy that you want to see a lot of in this game because I think it's been a really good summer for him. Potential developmental tackle. That's always attractive because the NFL is starved of offensive line talent. And if you can find somebody that can stick and be molded, then you hang on to that guy.
What do you do with Kendrick Green in this game?
The first question is how healthy is, Nate Herbig. Can he play? If he can play, then I think you want. The problem is if Herbig plays, he's still going to play some guard in this game. Like I could see Kendrick Green still being second team center to, when the second teamers initially come in and Herbig playing guard. So I think Herbig will see some center in this game. It may just come a bit later and maybe a bit more limited. So, when Green plays, it will be at center and he may get snaps the moment the twos come in.
Do you need to see anything at wide receiver with obviously once the starters go out, then the starters are out. How much do you play a guy like Calvin Austin the third in this game? Do you leave him in after the first team?
Oh yeah, I do. I want to get him as many reps as possible for a guy that missed his whole rookie season. I want him to get as many just chances to put on tape this summer before the games start to count. So yeah, I think Austin's a guy that needs to be in whenever the backups come in.
Okay.
And then, Gunner's going to play. And the receiver group feels a little short right now with Cody White being out. And not that Hakeem Butler was playing a ton before he got hurt, but Hakeem Butler being out. So I look at somebody like Des Fitzpatrick trying to really, cement himself a practice squad spot. I think it's been a nice summer for him. Had that great tackle that we discussed on the punt team as a gunner against Buffalo. He's a guy with a good outing here. Could, I think, lock himself into the practice squad.
Okay.
And then, tight end. What are you looking for from Darnell Washington? Anything in particular?
I'd like to see some more run blocking with him. Not that I don't know what I'm going to get within that aspect of there, but I've just more snaps in general.
Okay. Yeah, I think more snaps, more reps. I'm with you. 100%. Does Tanner Morgan play in this game?
Yeah, I think he does. He might get the entire fourth quarter in this one. Okay.
And then at running back, McFarland. Again, I think he's the clear internal option. I'll keep talking about the potential outside options. I'm sure you want to see Valladay, and I want to see some Greg Bell in this game.
Mm-hmm. McFarland had a nice pass protection block on one of those plays there in that game. So once again, he has not hurt hurt his chances at all at the roster and based on the back end of the roster. Any threat to McFarland, I think at this point, when it comes to a 53-man roster spot, would be somebody outside the organization. Let's transfer this let's carry it over into special teams now at this point. I would like to see Harvin backed up in his own end, punting out of his own end zone. That's one thing I hope happens in this game. I would like to see more Austin on punt returns, and I would like to see Austin and McFarland divvy up the whatever kickoff returns are in this game.
Yeah, I'm with you 100%. I want to see more. I mean, I think Austin's going to be the punt returner unless he, muffs something in this game and just looks like a disaster off the 54-yarder run back that he had against Buffalo. But more you can see from him, the better, for sure. Different situations, whether it's fair catching and judging the fair catch. If he's at his 10, what do you do with that one? I want to just see him in different kind of moments. And then, hopefully McFarland can get a kick return opportunity. He got one last week, and it was 4 yards deep, and I don't begrudge him for taking it out, but the blocking was terrible. Herbig missed the block, and he had no running room on that play. So again, how do you judge McFarland? I mean, this is a guy I checked last night. He had one kick return in college. He's got, I think, 3 in the NFL in his career. How do you judge that?
He has a couple others, I think, in preseason, does he not?
Yeah, I think so. But in terms of just the regular season or college action, he's got, I think, 4 to his name.
Yeah, I mean, I want to see him out there as many times as I can, even if it means Atlanta scoring a couple of times to have to kick off or whatnot. I would like to see him get more opportunities at that.
Yeah, so hopefully he does. As you said, Atlanta will kind of hold part of that fate in his hands. But anything else here on special teams?
They're gonna mess up and shut him out and only get one kickoff in this game, and it's gonna be a touchback. Damn you!
Yeah, I don't know. We'll talk more about McFarland, I guess, after this game. But I think even McFarland said, because I got some pushback. Oh, Alex, you think he's a bubble guy? He's gonna make the team. Listen, I think internally, no one's going to push him. I think if a Pittsburgh Steeler currently on this roster will be the third string running back, it will be McFarland. And if this guy gets, a 45-yard kick return in this game, the way that Austin, I think, kind of sewed up his punt return spot last week, then yeah, McFarland has a good run back. Then I think he sews up the kick return spot and you go from there. But if not, then I still think outsiders are possible. I'm going to have an article on that upcoming about one name that I think makes a lot of sense to potentially be that third running back from an outsider perspective. So stay tuned for that. But this game, McFarland said it. I agree. It's a big game for him.
All right. My next 53-man roster prediction will come probably about midnight tonight, I think. Yours hit midnight this morning. So why don't we plow through that real quick?
Yeah, I mean, we can go through things position by position group, or I just thought we could just talk about the differences that I made because I only have just a couple. And so it's probably just best to just talk about the differences, and then we'll talk about the full ones whenever we have our final roster prediction. But I made a change along the O-line, and I really flip-flopped here. But I have a new name, and it may surprise people. But the more I thought about it, the more I kind of convinced myself that it made sense. So I took off, I believe it was Kevin Dotson, but I put in Dylan Cook, the offensive tackle. And I think, he's a guy that's had a really good summer. He's been able to move up the depth chart more recently, late in training camp, getting second team reps. He worked second team against Buffalo. And here's my thought on Dylan Cook. I understand that he'd probably be inactive on game day, but one reason why I kept him was we assumed that Dan Moore Jr. will be the starting left tackle in week 1. And so that kind of leaves a bit of murkiness in terms of the backup right tackle. I know Spencer Anderson could potentially do that, but I think you might want to have some more right tackle options, and you just hold on to talented, moldable offensive linemen. That's a potential waiver claim situation because, like I said, the league is so starved for any offensive lineman who's worth anything. So I think Cook actually might have a shot to stick on the 53.
And obviously, the guy that you took off of there was Dotson. So what happens with Dotson? I've thought for quite a while he's going to be traded. Do you think he ultimately gets traded, or do you think he's just part of the cut down?
Yeah, it's really tough. I wrestled with this a lot. I mean, I think obviously ideally you'd like to trade him, and it makes the most amount of sense if any Pittsburgh Steeler were to be dealt. It's Kevin Dotson. So I guess that's kind of in my head right now, not really knowing, who would want him and who's dealing with injury and all those kinds of elements. But my thought, and I guess kind of my hope, is that Dotson would get dealt.
The only way that you would differ from because you have 9 offensive linemen in total, the same as you did last time. I think the only difference being Cook over you're keeping Cook instead of Dotson. The only way you could see, I mean, I like the thinking here because look, you're going to have to dress 8, right?
Mm-hmm.
Who and if Dotson is not part of the 9, who could be a 9th that's currently under contract, who deserves to be the 9th, and of all the offensive linemen, Cook is the best option. I agree. I'm 100% on board with that. Now, the only way that this would change is if they did go out and acquire another center.
Sure,
right?
And that's possible. And again, I make my projections based off the current guys on this roster.
Right. So I certainly do understand your thinking there, that it's Cook the 9. I feel like they're going to keep 9 in total, with the 9th either being Dotson, Cook, or a center somewhere else right now.
Okay, that's fair. Yeah, my projection, my starting O-line would be Moore, Sayamalu, Cole, Daniels, Akor for the active backups, Broderick Jones, Herbig, and Anderson. Cook probably ends up inactive. Nate Herbig is going to be the backup center. Anderson is going to be, whatever he needs to be in that given moment because he can do everything. Broderick Jones, your backup left tackle. Anderson, I guess, would probably, like I said, it'd probably be Dan Moore shifting over as kind of your backup right tackle. So that's kind of the messiness I'm getting in the weeds here, but that's kind of how I view the O-line right now.
All right.
And so the only other change I made was I just kind of am flip-flopping here, and I have not landed on what direction I want to go. I truly think this finale may come down to, may determine who gets the spot between Loudermilk and Watts. And so I went Watts here over Loudermilk, just kind of reversing each time. But I think D-line is really hard to figure out.
Yeah, and you obviously have let's see, who was the change then this time?
I had Loudermilk before, and I swapped him back out for Watts. I've just kind of been going back and forth.
Yeah, I mean, Loudermilk had that kind of push there, I guess, kind of midway, a little past the midway point in camp, but I mean, he still seems like pretty much the same guy. Armand Watts is just more athletic, I think, right?
Oh yeah, he's more athletic. He's a better pass rusher. His hand use is better. So I'm trying to think. Okay, what is Loudermilk doing better than Watts? I still think Loudermilk against the run is not as good as he can be or should be, but I do think he's better. I think he's a bit more consistent. Maybe I want to say he's a bit more technical. Maybe just a bit stronger and just a bit more steady against the run.
Who was another of these? Who other than Loudermilk was there another one that we were playing with that could potentially make it in here? No, I think
to make it. I mean, there's all Montrevious Adams. I mean, I have 3 nose tackles with Adams, Benton, and Fehoko, and obviously, that looks heavy.
Right.
And so obviously you could keep Watts and Loudermilk. That's possible. If you cut one of the nose tackles and Adams or Fehoko, then yes, you could do Watts and Loudermilk making the team at the end.
All right. So who would be your if you're dressing just 6? Who's going to be inactive?
Fehoko.
Okay.
Yeah, that's how I think I would go about that. Other than that, everything else is chalk. And so, 6 corners, 4 safeties, linebacker room is, I think, pretty much set in stone. Wide receiver and, Gunner, some people, said Gunner could make it. And I think that he could, but, what exactly is his role, his value, his purpose? If he makes the team, backup return guy, backup third string slot guy, that's kind of where he's sitting at.
Yeah, and if you kept 6, one of them would be inactive, and it would probably be him. Oh, are you in the least way, shape, or form tempted to keep Gunner over Zach Gentry? As far as, a 1-for-1, obviously different positions there. But because, I mean, are you going to dress 4 tight ends every game? Throwing Connor.
Sure.
Connor's obviously going to dress. Pat Fryermuth's obviously going to dress. Is there any reason to think Darnell Washington's not going to dress at this point?
Yeah, I think Washington. I'd be very surprised if he did not dress week 1.
Right. So, I mean, can you trade Zach Gentry?
I don't know if there's enough value for what he's offering. There's probably enough big body blockers and 6 offensive linemen you can put out there for a team that wanted that. To the point, yeah, could you put Gunner over Gentry? I don't think that's a crazy thought. I think that's something that we could be talking about come August 30th and go, oh yeah, they did do that. But I just think for a team that wants to run the ball and be so kind of heavy, Gentry makes a bit more sense overall. And yeah, Gentry's going to be inactive, but so would Gunner if you kept him. So it's it's the same thing.
If you kept the 5, we're going way.
Okay.
This is what we do. If you kept just the 5 there, and Calvin Austin did something pregame, who returns punts for you?
Deontay, because he's done it.
Okay.
They just took him off obviously to protect him, but I mean, obviously in a game if you had to. And I that was a good thought, and I thought about it the other day. Oh yeah, Deontay can do it, and obviously not a long-term thing, but for a game, he's going to be fine back there.
Okay. All right. I am toying with the idea of keeping 6 with Gunner and then cutting Gentry.
Ooh.
I could, how, and look, I'm not a Zach Gentry hater. I think he's a fantastic guy and all like that. I don't know what the value is in keeping Gentry, especially the way it sounds like Connor Hayward's going to be used. You know what I'm saying?
Well, let me put it this way. Darnell Washington gets hurt, not just in mid-game, but just, longer term multi-week injury. Who's that kind of, they want the big body tight end who can block. And that's why they drafted Washington. That's why Gentry's been kept around. So I think they want Gentry as an insurance policy because obviously Connor Hayward cannot do the things that Darnell Washington can do for this offense.
Right.
So that's why I think you keep Gentry. And if you keep Gunner, I think it's a good thought, and I think it's certainly plausible. But if you keep Gunner, okay, what is Gunner's value? You say Gentry doesn't have value. What is Gunner bringing to the team?
He could obviously play, slot and if you got into a situation, I can imagine he could give you slot snaps at the X, but and then obviously the punt return aspect of it. If you got into that situation, he's not going to help you on any other special teams units or anything like that.
Right. Like someone would have to get hurt.
Just a high effort guy, And
he's had a good camp, like legitimately, has always had a good camp. To your question, let me give you a hypothetical back. Say Anthony McFarland twists his ankle pregame. Who's your kick returner?
Yeah, I'd probably let Austin do it.
Yeah, I think so. Although I'm not sure when the last time he has done it. I know he didn't do it in college.
Was it that one that kind of bounced and then he took back for
the touchdown?
Yeah,
that was a punt.
That was a punt. Okay,
that was a punt. He didn't return. I don't think he returned a single kick at Memphis, believe it or not.
Okay,
but I think in a game in a pinch, you just say do the fair catch thing, let the ball go over your head. That's probably how you get through the game if your kick returner went down.
Right.
All right, here, Dave. What else do we have? I think we covered all the things we wanted to cover.
What did you think about Merrill Hodge comments on the Zach Gelb show
about Kenny Pickett?
Yeah,
just kind of the general. I mean, obviously he spoke highly of Pickett. I mean, he is literally paid by the Steelers, so I don't expect Hodge to really have a super critical lens toward Kenny Pickett. But yeah, I mean, I respect Hodge's opinion. I think he's got a good eye for quarterbacks. He called out Johnny Manziel, well before probably anyone else did, and said this guy's not going to work. So he's obviously in that building. He's been around Kenny Pickett, knows the work ethic. I thought he made good points about the accuracy. That's really the important trait. And yeah, you can kind of work on it, but you're kind of either accurate or you're not accurate. And you generally don't see a lot of changes there. Josh Allen kind of more the exception than the rule. So I didn't disagree with anything Hodge had to say, but as somebody who's employed by the team as an analyst and a scout, kind of expected him to say good things about the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Yeah, but he sure will have you running through a wall if you didn't know otherwise, sure. Right? I mean, the way he talked, and once again, the association with the Steelers and he's not going to gig Pickett in a radio interview like that. But he did make a lot of great points about, and sure. He focused quite a bit on the accuracy aspect of Kenny Pickett's game, and and look, 17 snaps. That's another conversation. If we were forced to pick out what is the worst thing that Kenny Pickett did in the 17 snaps so far in the preseason, what is it?
just not playing enough. You want to see more of this first team offense, I think.
Right. I mean, and in other words, I mean, it's been pretty damn good.
Yeah, I mean, you can't complain about the actual product. Yeah, I mean, but just I think even Tomlin kind of hinted that. You almost thought you'd hope these guys would play more, and as you pointed out, you just hope for a red zone opportunity to see how that looked. Hopefully down to the goal line.
Right. I mean, the only knock on Kenny Pickett so far during the preseason is that he hasn't got any red zone time.
Yeah, so that's kind of all my thoughts
and that's
here.
Obviously not his fault.
No, not his fault at all. But yeah, you'd like to see it. And as you said, if you had a 10-play, 11-play drive in this finale, and you punched the ball in from the 3-yard line, then that's the perfect preseason you've ever had for this offense.
Right. But I thought it's a good interview. People haven't heard it. We've written quite a bit about it on the site already today. But it's easy to find on Zach Gelb podcast and all, about 15 minutes of what else did he talk about in that interview?
Just like the core the Pittsburgh has, kind of goes back to our discussion about all the skill guys and how impressive they are. Had some, I think, reservations about the Todd Monken offense, what Baltimore's doing over there. Just kind of spoke highly of what Pittsburgh's building.
All right. What else did we want to cover today?
I think that was everything. Let me just kind of put a bow for this finale. If you could only have one question answered, or if you could only know one thing about the outcome of this game, before it happens, I'm asking this question very poorly, but what do you want to learn most about the Pittsburgh Steelers coming out of this Falcons game?
Are they healthy?
Okay. Yeah. And so far, so good. To me, that one, I think, for sure. But how much center can Nate Herbig get in this game?
Yeah, that's a good one.
And I think it'll be maybe a little less than you think, but because Dotson's got the shoulder and, Green can only play center. Why didn't Kendrick Green get any left guard work this summer? Do you think?
Yeah.
I don't know, but hopefully we'll get Herbig some time.
And look, once again, going back to the whole outside center thing, other than the guy that you've talked about for several weeks now in Morrissey, who else is out there that would even be an upgrade over Herbig?
That's a very good question. I did put together a list.
The biggest, it's not that the thing with Herbig is he just does not have the in-game experience.
Right. So if you get a replacement, you got to find someone who's played a lot of center in the middle. Otherwise, what's the point of bringing somebody else in?
Right. I mean, if you want to look around some of these rosters right now and say, well, they have a guard / center here, but his primary position's guard. Well, you already have that in Herbig. Right. But if you wanted to find a true center, a guy that says, look, this guy, because one of the big concerns with Herbig, I think, and maybe this would fall on more on Kenny Pickett or somebody else on the offensive line, is the line calls and some of that other stuff. You
don't think Herbig could do that?
I wonder about it. I do wonder about it. Yes.
I think he's probably lacking a lot of experience doing it, but he's played some in the NFL. He's a smart guy. I think he could do it, but obviously, and I think, as you said, it kind of helps that Kenny Pickett's now in year 2, and it isn't the rookie that probably needs more assistance.
Right.
I'm going to write about this after the game, probably as kind of before cutdowns, probably obviously, but I did do some research on some centers who are out there that may fit. I'm not going to read off all the names here to spoil everything, but I'll give you 2. Your man, Mr. T-Rex, Nick Harris, over in Cleveland. I know
that's not my guy.
I know that was a sarcastic thing because I know he's got the super short arms, but Luke Weipler's done well for them, and they found something in Pochik, so that's a potential cut there. And then I also mentioned or have noted here Pat Elflein, who's out there in Arizona, who Pat Meyer coached in Carolina in 2021. He's been a journeyman, not a great career, but he's a guy. And then obviously, Jimmy Morrissey's the guy that I think Jimmy Morrissey makes as much sense as literally anybody else that you could offer.
Right. Especially, the link with Kenny and all like that. He's serviceable, I think.
Yeah, because the concern is you get a backup center. Week 1, you need a backup center. I don't know how many reps has your backup center gotten with Kenny Pickett, even just been around the guy. And obviously Jimmy Morrissey has gotten a ton of reps with Kenny Pickett and just knows who Kenny Pickett is.
Yeah, I'll leave it at this when we're talking about center. I think they feel a lot more comfortable, and they should, be the ones that feel more comfortable. They feel a lot more comfortable with Herbig in that spot than I do.
Okay, that's probably fair. I'm relatively comfortable. I guess my only concern is if Herbig's the backup everything, that's kind of stretching it a little thin to be the backup guard and the backup center. You can get a couple guys hurt.
Right. Well, then your rookie Anderson's in the game then, right?
Right. And the good thing is that Anderson can wear a lot of hats. Now, the quality of that play as a rookie, we'd have to debate, but at least you'd have a guy that can do it.
Right.
Anyway, Dave, I think it probably covers everything. We get to a couple of reader emails and close out today's show.
All right. Brandon says, I have OCD. Also, I wear the same pajamas every single day. It throws off my whole day if they are dirty and can't handle it. He says, I also wear the same T-shirts over and over. Right there with you. I tell you, you talk to my wife, she'll tell you I'm certified. Because like I said, I wear the same. I have 3 sets of the same outfit that I wear every day. Look, it's a blessing with some of the work that I do on the site because I'm so repetitious that it becomes habit with some of the things that I do. So I've learned to accept my dysfunctions as blessings. Chris Warren writes in, I think Alex is starting to get some of this stuff too.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Which is fun to see. I mean, little things like labels on products. I mean, don't change anything at all. I mean, I don't need new and improved.
Aquafina changing the color of their cap. Why are they doing that? Why do we need to go from blue to white?
Ragu pizza sauce in the can. I don't need the label changed. Okay, there's nothing wrong.
Who's asking for the label change of Ragu?
Because when you change something like that, my mind instantly goes to what else have you changed in this? And then I start thinking, well, that tastes different. Does that taste different? That kind of thing there. So a mind is a terrible thing. Period. Hey, Chris Warren writes in, hey guys, I'm so sick of hearing the national sports media alternating between trashing the Steelers one week and trying to crown them as AFC North champs the next. It's all based on a handful of highlights. They act as though skill positions are all that matter. They completely discount the importance of the big uglies down in the trenches. I'm so thankful that we have you guys. You're such a breath of fresh air as compared to your peers who rarely scratch the surface. Your training camp preseason coverage has been awesome, and it's very much appreciated. Well, thank you for that, Chris. And look, I mean, the national guys are the national guys. That a lot of them just stay on the surface like that, right?
Yeah, I mean, people can listen to whoever they want to listen to, but I think the beauty of the internet is the ability to have the niche stuff. We don't have to go to the surface level person for anything. There's always some niche, guy, or team or site that all they do is cover the one thing and hopefully know that thing really well. And that's kind of our goal here. I think niche is the way to go in terms of, breaking into the sports world and kind of carving out your home and building something for yourself is to be, I'd rather be hopefully really good at one thing as opposed to just okay at 10 things. It's kind of my whole approach to life.
Luke Hare writes in, I'm a relatively new listener since summer 2021. I was searching for good Steelers content to listen to while out on the farm and came across a terrible podcast. Once I found you guys, I was hooked. I've heard you tell about your background, Dave, how you grew up a Steelers fan and how the site came to be. Something I haven't heard is how you found Alex and how his role became that of primary camp analyst and podcast partner. You guys make quite a team, and I can't get enough content. All right, tell the story, Alex.
Yeah, I mean, it's been now officially over a decade ago, if you can believe it. I was writing for another just kind of small Steelers site just for fun, writing up game notes, and I guess it was on Twitter. I know that you had reached out to me. I guess you added me or something, and then we had a phone call. And this is how long ago that phone call was. That first discussion we had was on my mom's landline telephone, recorded. It was a corded landline telephone. I remember literally white crappy phone from like 1980, and we had like a 20-minute conversation about that. And then you just said, hey, you want to work here? And I said, yeah, sure. And fast forward, and here we are.
Yeah. I don't even remember what site that was. I don't even know if it's still in existence anymore, that message board.
I believe it is.
That you had. But a very, very good decision on both of our parts, I think.
Yeah, no, I think so. And just celebrating 10 years and looking for great things here for the site.
All right. I think I got one or two more real quick here. Bryce writes in last preseason game. Dave, I know I'm a little late on this, but I thoroughly enjoyed the segment on adjusted net yards per passing attempt stat. Good stuff. He says, however, I think the team can make a surprise playoff run, even if Kenny is between 6.1 and 6.4. If they offset that by running very successfully, blah, 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 finish drive. Yeah, look, I mean, you're kind of splitting hairs a little bit there. The key thing is let's make sure that adjusted net yards per passing attempt stat with Kenny is over 6. I mean, if you get into 6.1 and 6.4, you're probably going to be in a few ball games. And if you get a couple of things bounce your way, I mean, it can make a difference in every game. But I mean, I really do feel confident that, if he can get to 6.5 or higher, I mean, you're really talking about if everybody stays healthy, I think you're looking at a team that could potentially win 10, 11 games. I mean, you have to look at the Steelers at a schedule at all aspects of this thing. And I have admittedly gone more optimistic about the Steelers since camp and preseason has gone. I mean, how could you not really? I think when the fan aspect of your side kicks in and all like that. But I think it's just more important than anything when you look at adjusted net yards per passing attempt number with Kenny. Man, if it can get over 6 and if it can even get 6.5 or higher, you've got something there. So it's not a look. There's been, I think, teams that have made the playoffs with QBs that have adjusted net yards like 5.9 and all, like that and all. So it's not impossible there. A lot of things got to go your way. He says, number 2, the Najee and Jalen argument is a done deal to me. It's Najee all day. And let's see. He says Najee has been the guy from day one and defenses are geared to stop him. Jalen, on the other hand, is not a guy that defense is focused on stopping. Well, I mean, they haven't had to focus on Jalen stopping. Look, we've already said on previous podcasts, I mean, not that it's Najee's job, but the only aspect of it is can you get Jalen Warren on the field more? Bryce is attacking us like we're saying it's one or the other here, and I don't think either one of us have been in that boat. I mean, we understand it's Najee's your lead back. He's going to get a predominant amount of playing time, predominant amount of carries and all like that. All we're saying is that Jalen's done enough to get more snaps on this team.
Yeah, I don't want to view it as a knock on Najee. I wrote the article the other day, Najee Harris, Jalen Warren, and false choices. It's not either or, it's both and. I think for Steeler fans, especially a younger group, and I don't know the age of the reader here, I'm just speaking generally, that I think we're accustomed to there being one guy. There was a lead back, there was a starter, and there's a backup. That's what Le'Veon Bell was. That's what James Conner was attempting to be. The injuries got in the way of that. They drafted Rashard Mendenhall. They want these big lead workhorse backs, and that has changed with Jalen Warren's emergence. And Mike Tomlin's been flexible enough to have a bit of committee and a bit of rotation there. So it's an adjustment for us in our mindset to go, okay, there's no longer 1 and 2. There's kind of 1A and 1B, and Pittsburgh's going to go in that direction this year.
Mario writes in, he wants to challenge the fungibility notion. The argument of not drafting running back high is that mid or late round running backs are able to give equal value. I think there's a misperception about that because people always look at the late round running back value and a running back has done well, not before. So I pose this, have Dave, known proponent of not drafting running backs high, pick 5 running backs drafted in the 4th round or later this year and see how many in turn major contributions to the offense. In short, pick the next Jalen Warren teams. Look, if you draft a running back in the 1st round, he's going to get more play, is he not?
Sure, of course he will.
More opportunity than the later round guys there. And my notion's not so much that it's a one-to-one change. My notion is that but you can get it done by more of a committee approach if you have to go more of the non-first round guys.
Yeah, no, I understand the argument there. Just the argument is not that just pick any running back at random in the fourth round or on, and he's going to work. But if you build a really good offensive line and good scheme, the running back you have back there matters less, because if it's blocked, most running backs who were, even decent in college can make it work at the NFL level. And I think that's the overall fungibility argument.
My whole thing, and look, I mean, if you want to draft a running back in the second round, have at it. My main thing is the whole first round aspect of it there. That has been my main argument, this whole thing. It's not that drafting them in the first 3 rounds. It's the specific spending the first round draft pick on them that I have the hardest problem with.
And for the first round, compared to the second round, is that because of the 5th-year option, or just because this is the guy that's the face of your draft class? Why is it so particular to the first round and not second round?
Yeah, well, I think too, because your first round draft pick is a guy that you want to have a good shot of being with the organization 10, 12 years,
Okay. Gotcha.
And also because of the wear and tear on these guys on top of it, they're probably bound to miss some games within their first four seasons because of that. So can you have that? Look, any guy you can draft a first round, whatever, safety, whatever. Those guys could get hurt just as easily there. But just running backs with what you ask them to do, and as many touches, and I think history bodes this out for those guys that get, and what happens once you get those guys to that 350 touch mark in one season as well too. There's that historical aspect of it. And look, if you are, and here was my other argument on first round running backs as well too. If you get one, I would like to see one that can deliver the explosive play on a more regular basis. And like it or not, Najee wasn't that guy at Alabama.
Right. The numbers prove that.
Right. So, there's that aspect of it too. So it's not that, oh no team should draft a running back in the first 3 rounds. To me, it's more about the value when it comes to a first round draft pick.
Yeah, no, I understand the position. I think it's kind of become the more.
And look, if you draft a guy in the 4th round, odds are, you probably already have somebody installed. Look at the James Conner situation, right? You had Le'Veon Bell was your starter, but you still took James Conner, right? Now he ended up, becoming the star. You don't go out of your way, I don't think, to draft a 4th round guy and make him your starter.
Sure.
Because usually there's pedigree and all stuff that's involved.
Yeah, usually it's injury protection or upcoming contract where, okay, we're not going to pay this running back next year, so let's go get his replacement a year early. It's kind of the mentality.
Right. Or you have a situation where they went out there and they got a few years ago, Carolina,
D'Angelo Williams.
Yeah, D'Angelo Williams. All of a sudden, drawing a blank. I could see his face. No, just couldn't. You go out. When you do that, you're usually going out and getting a guy that's either highly proven or has pedigree value. Which in the case of D'Angelo Williams, it was both there. I am just not a fan of first rounds on running backs. Period. In the story, I think when you get past that, though, obviously you're probably not getting a top 2 or 3 member of the draft class. Then, right?
Yeah, I guess typically, sure.
Sometimes you do find these guys sometimes in the 2nd round, though. But my thought is, if you're headstrong and going into the draft of getting a running back, I would be more apt to look at maybe those guys in the 2nd tier that are more 2nd or 3rd round guys. That's my thoughts on that. Now, look, I expect Najee to have a great season. This is a big season for Najee, right? I expect him to be 1,400, 1,500, 1,700 total yards from scrimmage there. But it still won't change my thought process on the fungibility, especially when it relates to first round running backs.
No, I understand it. I think it's well laid out, and I think it's a really good case. One thing I do want to see from this Falcons game, I forgot to mention. Not that I'm focused too much on what the Falcons are doing, but I know the pronunciation for his first name is kind of debatable right now. But Bijan Robinson, and see how he looks against the Steelers' run defense, and even if Pittsburgh's missing some of their starters for that D line, because Robinson saw that first carry he had last week, just a great run, and that dude's might be one of the premier backs in the NFL.
No, I don't have this handy. I can find it probably real quick. But, I mean, he was a more explosive runner in college, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I don't know the numbers, but he was definitely a big play guy at Texas.
But, I mean, even then, what number was he picked overall?
It was high. I think it was 7th. It was top 10 for sure.
I mean, I'd be jumping out of my skin, And look, he very well might be the next Hall of Fame running back, right? But anyway, that's where I come in on running backs there. Let's see. Boykin's backup. Or no, Steve Novakovic writes in, everyone from Mike Tomlin down to the newest fan is thrilled with the quick score performance of the Steelers' first string offense this preseason. Is Coach Tomlin making a big mistake, however, by counting touchdowns and not counting snaps when making decision on when to pull the starters? It seems to me there's a great benefit in having significant snaps against real opponents in the games that don't matter when you're preparing to play a good defense in week one. This may come back to bite us. I hope Coach T curbs his enthusiasm against the Falcons this Thursday. Look, I was thinking about this last night. It's a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation when it comes to playing players during the preseason. End of story. Yep. You don't play them enough. And then if you start the season slow, people say, "Well, see, you didn't have those guys out there. They didn't get it. They did get warmed up enough during the preseason. You lose somebody to injury in the preseason, a starter on offense. Well, you played them one snap too many there. You don't get to script these things, how games go, how other teams play. And once again, I'll go back to the big. I think." Even though I thought Pickett would probably play more snaps than he has played this preseason, you can't control the explosive plays and getting into the end zone of some of these things. And I guess you could have rolled them back out there another series, but what unit would they? You can't control any of that stuff. You have to go in with pretty much an agenda and get that agenda done and kind of go from there. The only thing I will say that's been a negative about the first team offense and snap totals for this team this year is the fact that maybe I would have instructed Jaylen Warren, if you break one, go down at the 5 because not getting the red zone work early in games is the only thing that this team hasn't checked the boxes on. So it doesn't matter what Steve writes here. It doesn't matter what our thoughts on this are about snap totals and all like that, because a head coach is in a no-win situation when it comes to playing time for any guy that's probably going to make the roster for them.
Yeah, I mean, I understand the thought, that, could you have played them more snaps, and you want to look at the totality of, how many reps are they getting, not just the results, but they did their job. And I think, bigger picture, we can debate, should teams play starters? Should they not play starters as a single snap? And what are those impacts on the regular season? But I don't think we're going to sit here in week 5, Dave, and say, man, if they only played the Steelers and Kenny Pickett one more series against
somebody
Buffalo,
will, especially if they come out 1-4, if they come out 1-3 or whatnot, the offense and all that, it'll be, well, they should have played that first team offense more. Inevitably,
right.
That's what's going to happen. Somebody somewhere will say it.
But obviously, the idea that if they just gotten one more series, their whole regular season fortune would have turned around. I'm not going to get that granular in terms of the effect of preseason reps in the regular season. So I'm for playing starters some, so they're not completely rusty. But, we're debating one series more, one series less, then we're probably in the weeds here.
And this is not going to stop us from getting these kind of questions year in and year out either, because that's what that's what people think about. One last one because we got so many in here. Garrett writes in, great job on the podcast. Appreciate balance and informed insights. It sounds like Dan Moore has earned a starting job at left tackle to start the year, and I know stability and chemistry are valuable on the offensive line. He says buy, sell, or hold. Dan Moore is on the hot seat and the team is motivated to insert their first round pick Broderick Jones into the starting lineup right after the bye week. In other words, he says, is Moore on a very short leash due because the team sees Jones as the future at the position. I think that they think they gave every opportunity for Moore to hold on to his job to start the season this summer. I think he has answered that. In the same breath, I think they view Broderick Jones as a guy that comes out of college without a lot of starting experience, that they wanted to get a lot of work in the preseason, which they have done. But I don't, in other words, it's more on it. I mean, yeah, look, for Moore to keep the job, he's got to play well, period. So yeah, he says, in other words, is more on a very short leash because the team, I don't think it's due to anything. Now, obviously, having a first round draft pick in that might escalate it to some degree. But if Dan Moore's not cutting it, then the next guy is the next guy.
I guess the question is, how much slack does Moore get? Is it one bad game and he's pulled? Is it two? I mean, I guess the question is, where is that line?
Right. I mean, I can't answer that. I think what it looks like has a lot to do with that. I mean, bad is usually bad, but I think the main thing about this is it buys them a little time. And plus two, if they didn't open up against Bosa and Garrett and Max Crosby, I mean, do you really want to put the rookie into the blender like that?
I have no problem with that personally. I think if you like enough to start him, then don't be scared about the opponent.
I mean, if we're talking about Joe Thomas coming out here, maybe so, but I mean, I think they want to slow burn Broderick a little bit in this. In this, I think that's their view on this. As long as Dan Moore didn't stink throughout the summer here, I think their whole idea was maybe to slow roll Broderick a little bit on this. Looking back now.
Yeah, I don't know if they really had an expectation to slow play, and obviously if they were hyper focused on getting Jones in lineup, they could just make him the starter today, and it wouldn't be the craziest thing in the world. So I just think their thought was, Moore's the starter, continues to play well. He's gotten better. Jones has been fine, but Moore's the better option. So we're going to go with Dan Moore, and that's kind of the end of discussion. So is he on the hot seat? I probably wouldn't use that phrase. I'm just kind of take things week by week. But I would just say, I wouldn't use the bye week as the line in the sand. I mean, Kenny Pickett came in at halftime against the Jets last week in week 4, and his first NFL start was at Buffalo in week 5. So the idea of, the matchups might be a concern. You got some tough things to do. I don't think Pittsburgh cares about that one iota. So I wouldn't say the bye week's that clean lineup. That's when you replace Dan Moore.
And it's a cop out here, but as I've learned over the years, these things have a weird way of working themselves out sometimes organically, whether it be injury or just, very noticeable bad play, that kind of thing. If Dan Moore opens the season and he plays above the line, and more importantly, this team's winning ball games, you're not just going to switch for the sake of switching there. But look, my thoughts on this, at some point, probably before the midway point of this season, Dan Moore, one way or the Broderick Jones is going to be the starting left tackle for however it happens.
That's possible. And obviously the odds of this team being as healthy as they were last year are very low. And if it happens, they should bottle and sell whatever they're doing, because it's apparently a miracle thing. But yeah, somebody gets hurt, whether that's, again, do you think that if a core 4 went down week 1, that Dan Moore slides over to right tackle, or do you disagree with my thought and think somebody else will step in?
No, I think you slide Dan over, because at this point, based on what we see, unless they come out and give Broderick some snaps at right tackle, I want my rookie where he's most comfortable at.
Yeah, I don't think Jones would be the right tackle. I guess the question would be, would a Spencer Anderson jump in there if he was active and makes a team or something like that? But yeah, I think Moore's the favorite. So if a core 4 gets hurt, Jones plays. If Moore gets hurt, Jones plays. If Moore struggles, Jones plays. And those are the options where you sit there and say, okay, probably at some point Jones will see the field.
Right. Now, I think the only thing is that, what if Dan Moore, what if Chukwuma Okorafor winds up your weak link 6 or 7 games into this?
Ooh, okay. One more rabbit hole for us to go down today. That's a good point.
And you're sitting there at a 500 record or something like that, fans obviously at that point still haven't seen Broderick Jones. They want to get him on the field anyway as possible. I just think that we're going to be easily by the midway point of the season, Broderick Jones is going to be in there one way or the other.
All right. Fair enough.
All right. We've gone a little bit over here, a lot over. So in the meantime, we will be back on Friday to recap the preseason game here and go over whatever news and start getting ready for final cut downs and all that kind of stuff. So in the meantime, you can follow me on Twitter at Steelers Depot. Follow Alex on Twitter at Alex_Kozora. Follow the show at Terrible Podcast. Email the show, theterriblepodcast@gmail.com. If you like what we do and want to donate to the cause, SteelersDepot.com. Hit the donate button up right navigational bar. Also, if you like an ad-free version of the site, SteelersDepot.com. Hit the ad-free button up right navigational bar. Until Friday, enjoy the game. We'll have every kind of content imaginable up these next couple of days here as part of that, covering the final preseason game, and we hope you join us over there on the site. So as always, thank you for listening, and as always, thank you for listening to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Alex.